Almost 10 years ago, a novel idea enabled by digital technology offered a new kind of accommodation for travelers: affordable, short-term rentals in private homes. It took off and made Airbnb a poster child of the sharing economy. But in the intervening years, it's gotten much more complicated, and cities around the world are now taking the measure of these homestay listings and, in some cases, cracking down on them. Ontario's capital city is among those trying to figure this out, and here now to examine the options, we welcome Kristen Wong-Tam, City Councillor for Toronto Centre Rosedale; Terry Mundell, President and CEO, Greater Toronto Hotel Association; Linda Pinizzotto, Founder and President, Condo Owners Association; Lisa Marion, co-founder, H&P Properties, that's a property management company with listings on Airbnb; and Yuri Vanden Steenhoven, Director of the Mars Solutions Lab, and we're delighted to welcome everybody around our table here at TVO tonight. I suspect, Lisa, everybody knows what Airbnb is, but just in case some folks don't, tell us.
Sure. Well, Airbnb is a home and property sharing platform. If you have a space that you would like to rent out, then you can list it on the platform and make a little bit of money from it.
A little bit of money. Are they the only company in the world providing this service?
No. They happen to be the most popular currently, but there's plenty of other sites: TripAdvisor, Expedia, Booking.com, Flipkey, Wimdu, 9Flats, HouseTrip. I can go on.
We get it. You are what's called an Airbnb superhost.
Yes, that's right.
What is that?
So I was the first one in Toronto, actually, back in 2010 when they introduced the program. It means that all the properties that I handle are at a certain level of quality and service. Guests are greeted nicely. It's clean, comfortable.
Airbnb vouches for you.
They do, yeah. They gave me a little cape and everything.
A little cape?
Yes.
Do you fly around in the cape, or how does that go?
Shh, don't tell anyone.
Don't tell anyone, okay. And your company, H&P Properties,
yes.
What do they do?
So we're a property management company. We do full service, but we specialize in short-term rentals. So we work primarily with condo and homeowners around the city of Toronto who have a space that they'd like to monetize. So they hand us the keys and we take it and run with it. In most cases, I'm sure this is going to come up in a conversation later, they're units that would not be in the rental pool normally because the owners use them from time to time. Usually it's a second home, or they keep it as a pied-à-terre, or some situation like that.
Gotcha. Okay, with that background in place, let's bring up, Sheldon, if you would, this graphic so we can share some numbers and get people some more background on what this is all about. There are more than 15,000 Airbnb hosts in the province of Ontario. More than half of them are in the capital city. The typical host earns just under $4,000 annually from his or her listing. More than half of the hosts in Ontario are women, and 45% of the hosts are over the age of 40. 88% of hosts have one entire home listing, and 3/4 of entire home listings are offered for 90 days or less of the year. I just want to, because I don't want to get in controversy right off the top here about whether or not we agree on these numbers. So Yuri, you having studied this a lot, are you on side with those numbers essentially?
Yeah, absolutely.
That all works,
But they've grown fast. So for instance, you've said 15,000 listings now. A year ago, that was 11,000.
So this is a burgeoning thing we're talking about here tonight.
Yeah.
Kristen Wong-Tam, want to bring you in here because you represent a part of the city where this is becoming a thing, as they say. How popular have short-term rentals become in your constituency?
Quite popular. I think we're seeing them along the corridors of where we normally see residential condominium towers. The communities largely have not been prepared for the type of wear and tear on the buildings. We are seeing some destabilizing effect of low-rise residential neighborhoods and sometimes even the vertical communities when they're not planned to allow for that type of commercial turnover and activity. There's concerns about affordable housing, the impact that the short-term rental accommodations will have on what is already a very difficult market.
So do I infer from you that you are opposed to this?
You know, I think we need to understand how to regulate it and make sure that there's consumer protection. We need to ensure that that there are not adverse impacts on our cultural tourism sector, as well as making sure that it is taxed and the properties that are hosting these Airbnb accommodations are zoned and properly retrofitted with the right type of safety equipment, whether it be carbon monoxide detectors, fire extinguishers, and what have you.
So I don't hear you saying shut it down. I hear you say regulate better.
Absolutely, we need to regulate it.
Okay, let's get the condos in here. Linda, what do the condo boards think about Airbnb taking place in the units of their condominium buildings?
Well, it's a double fold. The condominium boards are having an absolute nightmare with them, and on top of that, so are the property management companies. The problem is that there's no guarantee about how many people are coming into these suites. They're literally showing up at security, expecting it to be a hotel, treating it like a hotel. They have very little respect for the tenants and the owners, the residents of the building. They so much as knock on people's door if they don't have sugar. It's ridiculous. And on top of that, then we have a key issue, a tremendous security problem. People are being taken in, one person rents through the system, and then they bring in 6 more in the back entrance. And they put 6 and 7 people into 500 square foot units. Now they're using all of the utilities. They're using, because you got to remember, condominiums have a very specific operating budget. And it was not designed, a standard unit was not designed to have 5 and 6 people in there using hydro and washing their clothes all night and taking 3-year-olds and going up to the swimming pool. We have standard rules and regulations of the building. We have standard bylaws of the building. We have standard declarations of the building.
So are you trying to shut down Airbnb?
We're trying to make sure that this doesn't continue and hurt our economy, which means not necessarily shut down, because what we'd like to do is we want to deal with corporate relocations, which are standards. They're bringing good quality to the economy with the large companies that they work for on a relocation.
If you could really,
but the Airbnb short-term are travelers, and the condo world was not set up to be hotels. And yes, we are not in favor of them at all.
Okay, if you could get the kind of regulations in place that Kristen just talked about, would you be okay with that?
No, because it's not going to happen. It won't work. See, the problem is that there's going to be too many people that are going to try to circumvent the system, and they're already doing it. So they're going online, they're booking their hotel. Some of them don't even know it's a condo. The other day we got, at one of the property management companies from one other company that does the online, sent one of the units, without putting the unit number, a trophy, thanking them for being number 8 out of 10 for rental housing accommodations in hotel.
And you think condos ought not to be in that game?
Condos can't be in that game. See, every owner out there of a condo is going to be hurt, because we need long-term sustainable properties, condominiums. Now, homeowners of single-family detached homes, business owners, they're all hurting, because real estate is a domino effect. If you have overextensive usage of operating budgets, you have the reserve funds can't handle the wear and tear along the hallways because it was never built that way. And then you turn around and you look at this entire picture, you will have a decline in value on the property.
Okay,
because
these are the
maintenance
boards
fees are
talking
going
now.
too high.
Linda, this is you're here representing the boards.
Yeah.
But obviously
I am
the people
on the board. I'm the president of a board for 17 years.
Okay, but here's my question.
Yes.
Obviously the people who own the units in these buildings are doing this.
No,
So
they're the minority. The majority don't. You may not even be an owner. See, an owner thinks they're renting to Mr. Financier who makes $95,000 a year, who actually owns a condo, pretends that they're going to be a tenant in your unit as an owner. You take this person on through a rental agreement, and what do? They go and sublet it out and throw it out on the Airbnb system.
So you're confident that
It's a problem.
you're confident the majority of owners, of condo owners, agree with you?
Oh, absolutely.
You're confident. Okay.
I can say to you that in our building, in the building that I'm involved in, and I'm an investor, I own a lot of condos. Mine are all long-term tenants. Okay, the majority of these buildings, you have about 20 to 30 people in the buildings that are doing it, and it's escalating. These buildings have 300 owners.
Gotcha.
Okay.
Let's get the hotel guy in here. You're a big fan of Airbnb, aren't you?
Well, I'm not so sure big fan's probably the correct way to terminate.
I think it's actually probably quite the wrong way to describe what you think of it. What's your biggest problem with Airbnb?
I think the challenge for us, and I think we all have to realize that home sharing has been around for years. And it is somebody who owns a facility, who rents a portion of their facility out, they reside there. And I think what's happened is we've lost our way in that, because that's not what's happening now. For our business, we're prepared to compete with anybody. And it's what we do in business. So we're not afraid to compete in a marketplace that is consistent in terms of regulation, taxation. We've got a lot of investment in our properties. We create a lot of jobs in our communities. We're part of the social fabric of communities. We're not afraid to compete. But clearly what we need to do now is we need to look at all 3 levels of government, because there's a federal interest, there's a provincial interest, and there's a municipal interest in trying to understand how we manage, regulate, and tax the new economy, the sharing economy.
Let me pick that apart a bit. How currently is the playing field uneven to hotels compared to Airbnb?
Property tax alone in downtown Toronto, we pay actually on average about $4,400 per available hotel room in the city, and actually up to as high as $11,000
Per unit per hotel?
per unit.
In property taxes?
In property taxes. Or if you looked at those who are renting residential condominiums or who own them, it's probably about a third of the price. So some of those issues that we now compete with in terms of the cost of doing business in the city, whether it's Alcohol and Gaming Commission rules, whether it's fire marshal rules, whether it's making sure we follow up with disability legislation, all of those types of things don't come for free. They cost money to operate for us. And we're willing to do those types of things, but our competitors should too.
So, well, that sort of was my next question, which is, would you like a break then from having to follow those rules, or you just think those rules ought to be applied to your competitors as well?
In fairness, I think we need to be a little bit careful around the rules. There may be some rules, to be honest with you, that can be stepped back, but the reality of the issue is you're not going to change your fire rules, your fire safety rules. You're not going to change your rules around carbon monoxide detectors. Safety, security of our consumers, our customers is paramount for us.
Yuri, how is home sharing different from the business that Terry's in, hotels?
Yeah, so I think, and this is an issue that many cities around the world are grappling with, and there's a clear need for regulation to actually make that distinction. Home sharing is when you rent out your primary residence, where you live yourself, for a couple of nights a year. And you see the overwhelming majority on, for instance, Airbnb, is doing just like that. You could see it in the average earnings is below $4,000 a year. That is not renting out your apartment the entire year. The average is now about 90 days a year in Toronto, but many are below that. And probably for that overwhelming majority, there is not much of a problem. Of course, there's a smaller part where we talk about going over that threshold and basically subletting an apartment for 100% of the time. Then you actually start to become sort of an hotel business.
Then you're a hotel.
There is no regulation now, and the first thing that we also have recommended to do is to actually create a clear distinction between what is home sharing, primary residence with, for instance, a number of days a year, and you've seen that in many cities around 180 days, 120 days. You can decide upon that, versus a hotel or a motel that falls in a different regulatory regime.
So if there were strict limits put on how long you could put your place on the market, say for Airbnb, you think much of the problem would go away?
Well, I think then, for the overwhelming majority falls within that category, and then you actually, as for instance a local government, you then have the tools to address the core of the problem.
We should also say, you'll notice Airbnb is not represented at the table today. We did invite them to come on. They just couldn't work it out with their schedule, but they would like to have been here. We should just say that for the record. Is home sharing good for the tourism, good for the economy in that respect?
I think so, absolutely, and for a number of reasons. We've seen globally that tourism is on the rise, and the question is actually if the current sort of stock can actually take in all that new tourism. We also see an effect that tourism now is more widespread, not just in the downtown core, but broader in the city through home sharing. So I think definitely there is a place. When we did our research and we talked to many of the hotel managers, they didn't dispute that, and they welcomed the competition, just like Terry said, but under fair conditions, and exactly like fire safety and consumer safety is something that needs to be looked at.
In that case, let me follow up with the city councillor. Part of your job, I'm guessing, is to try and make Toronto as big a tourist destination as is possible, because when people come here, they spend money, and that's good for the local economy. Yes. Are you concerned that if you over-regulate the home sharing portion of the economy, you will deter tourism and hurt the city's economy?
No, not at all. I think what we want to do is be able to ensure that the regulations are going to be enforceable. And I think that's probably one of the challenges that Linda is identifying, is that in some cases it may not be. There's just too many units out there for the inspectors to go see, not to mention the fact that there's the cloak of identity of who actually are you renting from and what level of accountability is there. So even at the City of Toronto right now, we've had some real difficult times trying to find the actual owner of the unit that is on the Airbnb site, or perhaps on Flipkey or Kijiji, and we're really tasked with trying to find out the sort of the string of accountability, which takes time, effort, money, and resources, and there's no cost recovery for us to do that right now. With respect to the cultural tourism factor, that we want Toronto to be the #1 travel destination in the world, to attract those big, large conferences and conventions, I can't fit any of that into an Airbnb. There is no way that I can bring some of the big global conferences to Toronto, which we all want. Every major city wants them, but I can't do that if there isn't a healthy supply of mid-range hotels. And what I'm seeing in downtown Toronto right now is a number of hotels that are going to be demolished. They're part of rezoning applications for something that is different. And what oftentimes is proposed is new condominiums, and those new condominium layouts are becoming much smaller, and they're actually almost in effect redesigning themselves so they can actually compete on this new scale of short-term accommodations rentals without having to pay the commercial property taxes, without having to comply with the AODA compliances.
That's the Association for Ontarians with Disability
Yes.
Act regulations that are in place.
That's right, and we need all businesses to do that. So there is right now a shift, like a general shift in the economy where this has now been permitted only because it's this massive gray area that's unregulated, and we need to regulate it. And I would say that if we can't regulate it, we continue to see the adverse effects on the impacts on the affordable housing inventory, then at some point in time we may just have to shut it down.
Well, Terry, let me try this one on. Are there any hotels, truthfully, in the province of Ontario that are at risk of going out of business because Airbnb has taken away too much of their business?
Not that I know of.
So is this much ado about nothing?
No, I think it's a lot to do about something, to be honest with you, Steve. At the end of the day, you know, even if you look at our business in the Toronto marketplace, we have less hotel rooms in the City of Toronto today than we did in the year 2000. So as a city, you want to have investment. You want to have a business climate where investors come, they put their money in, we build a great hotel community, but we're not. Why? We have the second lowest net operating income of the top 20 destinations in North America.
But we may have fewer hotel spaces, but we may have more accommodation because of this sharing economy business that we're in now.
Well, I think that's the secondary part of this conversation. If you look at the types of units which are, you know, on the marketplace at Airbnb and other platforms, about 79% of them are condominiums, they're apartments, they're units that are very much like a hotel. So they are clearly targeting our industry. Yes. And that's a significant issue for us. But I think we also have to remember, they don't employ anybody to speak of. You know, our industry has 25,000, 30,000 people employed in the hotel business. That's an important part of our business. And then there's all the indirect benefit that we have. But at the end of the day, we have to make sure that we have, you know, a strong hotel community to build our city, to build that international reputation that we have. It's good for everybody.
Gotcha. Lisa, let me try this with you. Why would your clients opt for renting their place through Airbnb rather than a more long-term formal arrangement, if you like?
As I mentioned previously, quite a few of them tend to use the units throughout the year. You know, they're there for family visits or special events. It's their pied-à-terre. They maybe got it for their children to go to school, and then they still have it.
So they need the flexibility.
Yeah, they
that
need
Airbnb
the flexibility of short-term rentals, or the units are just never in the rental pool to begin with.
The money that people make, I mean, on average $4,000 a year, I mean, that's not chicken feed, right? How important is that to people who rent their places out?
That's incredibly important. For myself, I started doing Airbnb because I needed help covering rent. It's very expensive to live in this city. I think we can all agree with that. And I needed the money, and I enjoyed hosting, and I enjoyed the personal interaction with everyone, and that's how I sort of built up my little empire of things. And the money is still very important. And for my clients who do have it rented out more than the 90 or 180 days a year, they try to rent it out as often as they can when it's not in their personal use. The money is also important to them, to allow them to keep that place for themselves and to help pay additional bills when there's more than what covers the mortgage.
This is a little off the path, but I want to go here anyway. One of the things that you feel very comfortable about when you stay in a hotel and you close the door and you put the double bolt on and you put the chain on is that you're staying in a fairly secure environment. If you're Airbnb-ing it, you don't really know who's coming to your place to stay in your home, sometimes with you. Are those security concerns not significant?
Those are significant security concerns, and it's something that every good host should think about. The wonderful part about short-term rentals is that you're able to screen the people who are coming to stay in your units, and that's what you should be doing. Our stance is always screen. We've never had bad experiences. I've never had it either.
In how many interactions would you guess?
Oh, I've had hundreds and hundreds of people stay with me personally, and through the business, thousands.
And not one adverse connection?
Occasionally you get a bad apple, but a little bit of communication will clear that right up. So we like to talk to people before they book. We're not hotels. We don't accept just anyone. We like to know, why are you coming? Who's coming with you? I'd like a copy of your ID. What are your plans for the unit and during your stay? We have a no parties policy. We don't want people partying in any of our units because it's bad for everyone at that point.
Do people just lie about that kind of stuff?
Sometimes they can, but you start to develop a second sense, or sixth, or eighth, or... And I've been doing this for so long, and so has my business partner, that we know. We just know when things are going bad. And if they did manage to slip through our net, then we will go and visit them in person in the units and just reiterate the rules and do an inspection and make sure that everything is on the up and up.
Does that usually work?
Yes.
It does. Yuri, how much has Airbnb disrupted the housing market in the big cities of this province?
Well, if we look, of course, there is a housing affordability crisis especially in Toronto. I think nobody would deny that. There is in different countries across the world. There's been research in the effect of this on housing affordability. There has never been shown a direct link to the housing affordability. Now, we can't say if that is because it's still too small of a phenomenon and what is years to come, but currently, we don't see that effect happening.
Kristen, one of the things I assume is going to be tough to regulate this, and you've called for more regulation in this area, is that, what were those numbers again? We had in the province of Ontario last year 15,000 Airbnb hosts, which was up from 11,000 the previous year. Yeah. We can assume we're going to be at 20,000 pretty shortly.
Yes.
You've not got 20,000 bylaw inspectors that you can send all over the city to make sure everybody's complying. Compliance is going to be next to impossible on this, isn't it?
Yeah, and I think that's going to be the biggest challenge for most cities who have created these their own bodies of regulation, is compliance enforcement. And the City of Toronto is not going to be able to send out those inspectors. They're not hotel facilities where you know that there's 24 hours security, there's going to be someone at the door that's going to greet you. That is not the case. You have to go through a security checkpoint with the front desk, then you have to find the on-site property manager or the owner. That's going to be much more difficult. And I think that, even though there may not be, I want to just come back to this point, I think it's really important, there may not be some direct correlation with research about the impact on affordable housing. I think the fact that 180,000 individuals are already on the wait list in the City of Toronto for some form of affordable housing should tell us that that list has been growing, and it's been growing almost in lockstep in some ways with the exponential expansion of the popularity of the Airbnb platform. For every single Airbnb unit that's on the market for rent for short-term accommodations, whether it's 1 week or 10 days, that means that there's that one unit, even if it's not rented out, that's not available for a family to rent and build roots in Toronto. And so, yes, the Airbnb operator may get a premium, maybe they get a bit of flexibility, but I think we also have to evaluate what are we trading off, because it is very, very difficult to live in one of the most expensive cities in Toronto. Toronto. You take out those units of accommodation as rental options for those families and individuals that want to build long-term roots in Toronto. You are actually making things much more difficult.
So as an individual, you can improve yourself, but there's a societal imperative that also has to be taken into account.
Yes, and we want to build a new convention center. We want to expand our tourism facilities. I can't stress this enough. You cannot do this on the back of Airbnbs. Like, you just cannot.
Yuri, you wanted to say, and then we'll get Linda.
Well, again, there's absolutely a housing affordability crisis, but if you were to shut down, for instance, Airbnb, then it just means that that home that is now 90 days on the market is no longer on the market. Exactly. That house does not become available suddenly, magically, for someone who needs affordable housing. That's not and that's the overwhelming majority.
But there is a very important,
I think that we have to make that clear.
Okay, let the councillor respond, and then Linda.
So there is a very important factor for us to consider, is that there are property managers who've taken it upon themselves to now rent out perhaps these units on their own, and then what they're doing is they're subleasing them on the very, very short-term rental, and we're seeing them all over downtown Toronto, all over North York, and that's actually one of the biggest challenges, is that the property owner, the ultimate owner, doesn't even know who they've rented it out to. And by the time you get and this is no disrespect, but we are knowing this is actually a major problem with our condominiums, is that by the time the property owner finds out that they have rented out to a tenant who has then sublet it onto Airbnb and the short-term rentals, they've breached the condominium rules and regulations, they've destabilized the building, the accountability checkpoints become fewer and fewer and murkier and murkier. So the owner may not even know that that's what's happened to their unit, and they thought they were renting it to one person.
Linda, right here.
Steve, as you know, I've been a realtor since 1979. And that was what gave me the insight to create the COA in March of 2010. And this has been an ongoing problem. Our market right now is in a very tough situation. As far as anything staying on the market for 90 days is impossible. We have Ontarians, Torontonians who are trying to buy property. They can't. We have people out there that are trying to find rentals. They can't. A standard unit that could have been up for $1,800 a month 2 months ago are no longer available because they're now at $1,950 because Airbnb has taken away our housing. And that is from a long-term veteran that knows this market inside out. We have a huge problem.
Okay, but Linda, you can't put the toothpaste back in the tube. So you can't just ban this. We've got to come up with something else, right?
See, the problem is that we don't have, one of the biggest things is like right now, as far as working with the city, the COA is ready and willing to work with the city. We work with every building in the city, like around Ontario. The property management companies will tell us exactly which ones are Airbnb or Hotel.com or whichever one that they are. And that way we know. They don't go in there with pure honesty. Okay, you get owners and subtenants and everyone else coming to property management, trying every which way, giving a bogus fob, saying, oh, this is not working. Can you please reinstate this fob? Because they want 3 fobs, 4 fobs, 5 fobs. They're trying to circumvent the system every time they turn around because they're making money and they don't want to stop making the money.
Let's go Lisa, then Terry.
Yeah, so I can respond to a couple of these things. We agree with regulation. We are actually, speaking as a short-term rental host and a property manager, first of all, my company's on the up and up. We only work with owners, and the owners actually have permission from their condo boards to do this. The other thing is that a lot of the housing that we're talking about is not in fact affordable. I had to move out of the city because I couldn't afford the rents here in the city. And I don't see that as a result of our Airbnb pricing or anything, because people that want to do this sort of subterfuge and sublet and all of that you're talking about, we don't agree with that and we don't support that kind of circumventing the rules. We believe in collaboration and working together.
But the money that Airbnb puts in your pocket is essential to your being able to stay in the city? Is that what you're saying?
Yes, yes, and my company itself has created jobs. All the neighborhoods that we're in, they receive 42% more spending in their areas in the restaurants.
How do you know that?
From the Airbnb reports. you know, that's the latest information from September.
Those numbers legit? Like, where do they get that from?
They do their own surveys. I don't know. It's up to you guys to verify this. If there's other facts, I'm happy to look at them too.
Terry.
I think this is the point, Steve. People are running a business. That's what's happening, and they're running illegal businesses. They're doing commercial activity. They're not paying commercial taxes. They're not following the rules that commercial businesses have to. The Airbnb host
We pay our taxes.
in Toronto, in a study that we actually did, if you take a look at it, what we found was that those that have more than one unit, so those who are renting 2 or 3 different or 4 or 10 different units
Like Lisa.
together, like Lisa, running a business, they're responsible for about 50% of the revenue generation that Airbnb has, according to our information. They're running corporate, they're running commercial businesses. If we as a hotel went into a neighborhood and just decided we were going to run a hotel, we're going to buy a condominium, and we're going to change everything into hotel, people would be all over us. We can't do that.
Is that a fair
Why
point?
are these people special? Why are they different? Follow the rules.
Is that a fair point?
Well, I think it's something that we need to discuss on all the levels of government. Maybe we need to change some of the zoning laws and the ways that things are operated. We're working on creating an official body of hosts so that we can engage in conversation with all your groups to resolve these sorts of situations. You know, we want regulation, we want quality characters, you know, bringing people to Toronto who love our city as much as we do. Like, I think we're all on the same page. And
Doesn't sound like
we,
you're all on the same page.
No.
well, for the betterment of the city, I think we are.
That you're all on the same page, okay.
There's just different ways that we can do it. But we're willing to work with the city. We're willing to work with condo boards to help you guys establish rules and guidelines and weed out the people that are going around. Like, you see that it's happening. We don't think that that's a great thing either.
Kristen, though, this is very reminiscent of the Uber debate that many cities, you know, all around the world have been trying to deal with and figure that out. And at the end of the day, you know, taxi cab owners had to take a haircut at the end of the day. Even when they put more regulations in place to satisfy that demand, taxi companies and owners took a haircut at the end of the day. Is that basically the template for this debate as well?
I don't think so, not entirely. The impact of the sharing economy here, especially if you were actually taking a look at the fact that there isn't a heck of a lot of sharing and a lot of commercialization of residential properties, is that we have to ensure that we call it as we see it. So the City of Toronto has an official plan. This document is supposed to guide the growth of the city, where we anticipate commercial activity, where we want our employment zones, where we want our schools, where we want to build our parks. So everything has a place, so we create a stable city, and then we allow for the growth to happen. And I think what we're seeing is the destabilization of the official plan. When you have properties that are zoned residential and only residential use, then it becomes a commercial use property, such as the short-term rentals, and that's what they are. That's why we're trying to figure out, you're not quite a hotel, but you're operating like a hotel. You're not taxed like a hotel, but you're still operating. So this has actually got an effect much broader, in my opinion, than Uber. Uber was affecting a smaller market, a smaller group of individuals. Airbnb and all the other type of platforms, they are affecting every single neighborhood in Toronto. And in some neighborhoods, I can say with all honesty, you know, everything that was said earlier, I have heard exactly the same thing from my residents and the condominium boards. They're really struggling. They don't know how to respond to it, and they've been asking the city to respond. And to be quite honest, I think the province actually abdicated their responsibility when they were reviewing the Condominium Act. They should have done something about it then.
And they did not.
And they did not.
We put it on the table.
And
they totally objected to it. Every report that the Condo Owners Association put in from the moment of that review, we pushed the review from the moment that I founded the COA. And it was terrible because it was such an important element.
Who'd you meet with
we
at the
call
provincial
transient level? Oh my goodness. Well, we sat on the Condo Act review and the carbon monoxide review as well. So originally we met with John Gerritsen, then we met with
this is going back a
Margaret
decade.
Best, everyone. Yeah. Sophia Angelinitis, John Gerritsen, Margaret Best, Tracy McCharles, David Oriazati.
So these are all cabinet ministers in the Ontario government?
All the way through.
And you could never get them, you could never sell them?
We couldn't get them to listen to it. We did get, we were the ones that got licensing on property management companies and property managers. We got the Condo Owners Protection Act. That was hard. Even that, you know, another story is they didn't want to do the condo property management companies, only the managers, which is wrong.
I got a couple of minutes
left.
left
We tried very
here.
hard.
Just a few minutes left. I want to put a couple of more things on the table. I do note of late, Terry, The Mayor of Toronto, in an effort to pay for upgrading infrastructure in the city, would like to start tolling the Don Valley Parkway and the Gardiner Expressway and putting a tax on hotels in the city. I imagine you're a huge fan of that idea.
I'm not a fan at all of that idea, as you can imagine. I mean, you have to look at the reality of the business. We're one of the highest taxed businesses in the city right now. And at the end of the day, by adding another tax on hotels, that pushes us up to, with the HST, a 17% number. It'll put us in one of the highest tax brackets in North America, because remember that a lot of the states in the United States actually don't have state taxes. We have the HST, which starts at 13 points. They also talked about putting a tax on the sharing economy, the Airbnbs of the world, at 10%. So I don't understand, even from that perspective, the inequity of if we're starting at 13%, shouldn't they start at 13%? It makes no sense to me.
Lisa?
I think hotels should be taxed less and Airbnbs taxed more.
So you'd be in favor of actually having some kind of harmonized sales tax, some kind of sales tax on what you do?
I feel that it's fair. We are running businesses and we need to contribute to our communities and to our cities.
But it's a dangerous path here, because rental income, for good reasons, now is only subject to income tax. So again, like, are we going to put thousands of people that might even only rent out like for 2 or 3 days a year, and basically force them to start a business? We currently not do that.
He pays a corporate income tax. Why shouldn't these people?
Well, again, it comes all back in the end to that distinction between, and many other cities have done, the number of nights a year, and this is your primary residence. And there's a huge difference between people that live in their own home and rent it out for a couple of nights a year. And I would say let's not push them towards, for instance, sales tax, and those that are driving a commercial activity.
Find the sweet spot.
And they find that sweet spot. Also create what other cities now have done, London and Amsterdam. You talked about compliance. Create smart data sharing agreements. That's what the city also has done with Uber. One of the reasons why that regulation, which is now considered actually one of the best in the world, is working, because there is a smart data agreement in place. That should happen here as well, because that will help the city actually enforce. And Airbnb has partnered with other city governments around the world to do
What
so.
you're suggesting, though, is quite frankly, is while all the Airbnb and the transient rentals and all this going on with this so-called commercial entity in a residential property, is to tax that person. But what about all the other owners? Like, you've got 80% of the other owners who are now going to have to pay more money in their maintenance fees and the utility budgets and their operating and the reserve funds because of the additional wear and tear on a residential property.
I am going to have to leave that question in the ether, because we're plumb out of time. But you know what? That was a good debate, and I hope everybody knows a lot more about the issue now that you five have come in here and helped us out with it. Mr. Director, you on a wide shot? Good stuff.
Thank you.
A group thank you to all for coming into TVO tonight.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Help TVO create a better world through the power of learning. Visit TVO.org and make a tax-deductible donation today.